This is Alissa.
And this is Caroline. Welcome to Med Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We are proud medical surgical nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey. Unfortunately, Chelsea and Evie weren't able to join us today. However, we are very fortunate to have back with us our special guest co-host, AMSN CEO Terri Hinkley.
I'm so glad to be here with you guys today. I feel so excited to be an honorary co-host.
An honorary co-host, not just a co-host or a guest,
Right.
An honorary co-host.
Very
Fabulous.
fancy.
Fabulous.
Yeah, right. What's new in the world, right? We're preparing for holidays. We're in this middle of holiday palooza. Normally I cheat. I take my family on vacation. I don't have to think about holiday planning, but this year I actually have to put effort into it. So that's my current conundrum right now. What's going on with you guys?
We got through Thanksgiving. I was actually one of those people that didn't follow the advice of the CDC, which is very unlike me, but our family traveled to meet good family friends. We just kept it very small this year. So instead of having too much food, we had way too much food because we didn't figure out that there would be only 8 of us instead of sometimes 30 people. So that was an adjustment, but flying is happening, definitely. Middle seats were still open, but otherwise the plane was full, but it was not the crazy travel weekend. So it was actually kind of pleasant to move around in that environment with your masks and your hand sanitizer at the ready.
We had an interesting Thanksgiving this year. I think you both know I'm Canadian, so Thanksgiving in November has never been a big deal for us, even living in the States. And the reason primarily for that is my daughter plays competitive ice hockey. And Thanksgiving weekend is traditionally a huge ice hockey tournament weekend because it's a 4-day weekend. So we traditionally have traveled all over the country. Last year was Nashville, previous to that, Pittsburgh. And of course, those tournaments weren't happening this year, at least not that we were participating in. So my daughter came home from school with a guest. We have a guest with us through the holidays until January. My daughter's friend from school, Anna, who's from the Czech Republic and isn't able to travel home. So she's spending the holidays with us. So we had Thanksgiving dinner, the 4 of us, and it was delicious and wonderful and a new experience for the 4 of us together.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds great fun. Yeah.
No kidding. Caroline, you talked about overcooking or having too much food because everyone's gatherings were smaller than you're used to.
Yeah.
My sisters and I decided, no, we're not going to have a big gathering, but how about we do a pie exchange? Like everybody make one pie, but make several of that same flavor, and then we'll just switch them around. I ended up with 5 different flavors. So 5 pies for my gathering of 6 people. I have so much pie left in my. I know, it's so great. I'm like, I'm ready to throw it away. You know, like, when is it socially acceptable to throw away your leftovers? I mean, I guess that's my real question.
How funny. Well, yeah. How funny is that? That's always the elusive question. My husband is a bit like the Forrest Gump of shrimping. He can do anything with turkey, but when you're still eating turkey and it's Christmas already. As Terri said, you know, she's from Canada, I'm from Great Britain. So, of course, Thanksgiving is not a thing for us unless you've lived here for 30 years. But typically we eat turkey at Christmas. So now we are United States citizens. We do turkey at Thanksgiving and turkey at Christmas. So you want to be kind of done with it by Thanksgiving weekend. You know?
Right. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. Well, there is another big reason that Terri is with us today, and that is to talk about today's urgent topic, the COVID staffing crisis we're all facing as we are moving deeper into the second wave. Terri, why don't you start and let us know what we're learning at the national level?
It just breaks my heart every single day trying to navigate helping our nurses through this, because what we experienced with the first wave, as you'll all recall, was there were pockets of the country that experienced surges, New York, Washington, some of those early states that were really hard hit, New Jersey, where I live. And we had resources that we could pull from other areas of the country. So you saw a lot of travelers, you saw a lot of contingent nurses going and supporting those hospitals and health systems when they needed it. But what we're seeing right now is the surge is just national. Everybody's numbers are up and there aren't the resources to go in and help anymore. And that's worse, 1,000 times worse than what we experienced in the spring because there's no relief. Nationally, there's been some resources provided, field hospitals and those sorts of things set up to try and help with some of the surge. But we are hearing from all corners of the country that our nurses are just stressed and overwhelmed and they don't see an end in sight. And quite frankly, coupled with what seems to have been a real disconnect in what we feel individually about COVID and whether or not we're going to follow recommendations is really taking a toll on nurse mental health and just what they face every day in work and then have to face in their personal lives as citizens as well. It's heartbreaking in many, many ways.
Yeah, it certainly is, Terry. I've said this before on our podcast, but when 2020 was deemed the year of the nurse, who would have thought that all this would have happened? And sadly, it's not getting any better anytime soon. And like you said, whether people follow the recommendations of the CDC or not, this is just me speaking when I say I don't think we're going to get a hold on this until a vaccine is available and people are confident in receiving that vaccine. And as a member of the nursing profession, this has been one of the most stressful years. And I'm not even at the bedside. So I really empathize with the people that are truly on the front line doing this day in, day out since March, essentially. And everybody is just about ready to jump. You know, it's
Right.
just, like you said, it's heartbreaking. It's soul destroying. Nurses are always resilient and roll with the punches and go with the flow. But day after day, night after night, oh, we've had 2 call outs, or now this is the COVID unit, but now you have to do everything for your patient. There's only so much that these nurses, our Med Surg nurses can take. And I don't know where the answer lies except hope and pray that the vaccine is rolled out and that it's safe and people feel comfortable in getting it.
That's a valid point, Caroline. And the other thing that Terry said that kind of stuck out to me was that personal conflict between, you go to work and you're doing what you're supposed to, and then you go home and you have that like battle with people in your personal life. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have the emotional energy to argue with the people in my personal life about their feelings about following guidelines and wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And, I just wish I could get it over with or things like that, because you can only do that education for so long about not risking those around you, even if you aren't getting sick. And if you do get sick, long-term consequences of getting sick, it becomes exhausting. And if you're trying to care for those patients, you're seeing the effects, you're seeing the populations that they're impacting. In our area here in Salt Lake, it really is impacting the minority population the most. That's what we're seeing in our hospitals. And so when you're arguing with your friends that this is not their privilege is showing, I guess, is really what you want to scream at them. Like, your privilege is showing, you're not recognizing the impact of your decisions. And I don't have the emotional energy to sit here and argue with you about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're just exhausted from it all.
Yeah, it's draining. It really is. It's absolutely draining. And like I said, we're in a profession where we try and roll with the punches. We try and get the job done for the sake of our patients, but the hits keep coming, as they say, and there's just no reprieve from this. And recruitment and retention have always been a challenge in nursing. And this year it's really thrown us a curveball, because if we get someone in, then they see what they have to deal with. There's a mindset that I'm not doing this. I'm putting myself at risk. I'm putting my family at risk, and the door is revolving. And what I'm seeing and hearing in my facilities are with our new graduates. These poor men and women are coming out of nursing school and they haven't done hardly any hands-on clinical experience because we had to close our doors to students. And so they're graduating, they're passing NCLEX, they're getting their first job. And they're terrified, absolutely terrified, because there's only so much simulation can do. I mean, really, thank goodness we have simulation, but there's only so much that they can do. Just like last week, we had a nurse go off on a lunch break and she didn't come back. She was just terrified. She's in a state of such high anxiety. She said, I can't function. I can't do this anymore. And she walked off the job. And I'm sure we're seeing that around the country, where everyone is just at the start of their career, when everything is supposed to be so wonderful and exciting and supported by experienced nurses. Everybody is just at breaking points. They really are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Caroline. And I think one of the things that mildly, because I don't want to sound overly alarmed, because I think that there's things that we can do and strategies we can employ. But one of the things that mildly alarms me right now, to your point about the vaccine, is we're hearing data that is concerning to me, because there are a number of people that are distrustful of the vaccines. And the fact that the vaccines seem to have been developed quickly and perhaps don't understand the science behind why that is. So I'm worried that we won't see the uptake with the vaccines even when they're available. What alarms me, surprisingly, there was some survey data that we heard at an American Nurses Association meeting a couple of weeks ago, that 40% of the nurses didn't trust the vaccine data and process. And that's what's alarming to me, is that our nurses themselves perhaps don't trust or don't know the development process and what went into that, and whether they can trust the vaccines to be safe. And I think that there's a lot of disinformation and a lot of education that has to happen before we see the kind of adoption rates that we'll need to see with the vaccines, even if they are approved and made available.
I agree with what you're saying, Terry. That element of trust is always a big issue with vaccinations, whether you're a parent of a small child and the pediatrician and school system saying your child has to get these shots before they're allowed to come to school. Nurses are feeling the same way. I also wonder, though, looking at it from a slightly different perspective, if people are just so desperate to get back to normal, and so they take the vaccine when ordinarily they would have hesitated. I just hope that it is safe and it is effective. And knowing the FDA, their rules and their regulations, and they're so stringent, certainly we have to encourage trust more than skepticism. Right. So easy to say, of course, but for someone who is on the move all the time and travels a lot, I'll be first in line if I can get it, so that I can travel with confidence and feel safer in mixing with other people and having some protection against this virus. But it's certainly a dilemma. It really is. Yeah,
for sure. You made the point about your poor nurse that just couldn't even come back from her lunch break. And we're hearing and seeing evidence of that again all around the country, because nurses are just, and other healthcare providers, absolutely, but they're just so overwhelmed. And it's actually one of the things I wanted to make a point to bring up on this podcast while we were talking is, in recognition of that, AMSN, we have a whole page on our website of COVID resources, and they're resources pulled from all over. They're not just ours. Anytime we think that we have something helpful, whether it be data, whether it be education, whether it be how to take care of yourself resources, please just go to our website, amsn.org, and in the practice section, we have 2 pages dedicated to COVID-19. But what I wanted to point out was the latest thing that we have developed is what we're calling a safety checklist for nurses. And what it is, it's a resource that you can use, any nurse can use, on how to deal with issues if you feel your personal safety is at risk in the workplace, if you don't feel that you have the necessary PPE, the necessary staff, what you can do and how you can combat that within your own workplace, how you can be an advocate for yourself and for your peers, and takes you step by step, and it's downloadable as well. So you can download that and you can follow along. We also included information on occupational safety and health, so that you can look at what regulations actually say. We started out early on with some staffing resources, some education for non-med surg nurses, maybe that were floating into the area because of surges in certain areas, and some self-care resources. And then we felt that this was the latest thing that we really needed to develop on behalf of our members. So We are 100% committed to making sure that we're providing what our nurses need every single day to be able to manage through this pandemic, because we know it hasn't been easy. And this is just the latest offering in many that we're making available totally free. Just download the resource, visit the website, have a look at it, and then always open to feedback from individuals. I always share my email address. I love to hear from people sharing their stories, telling us what it's like and how we can help. So we're definitely here for all of our members and non-members alike, just to try and help people navigate this, because like you said, it's unprecedented. I don't think we've ever experienced anything like this in our lifetime.
That's great to hear, Terri. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. Once again, proves the point that AMSN is truly an organization that speaks to its audience and connects with the people that matter. And that's our medical surgical nurses out there every day. I know it's easy for me to sit here and say this because I'm not at the bedside anymore, but there are people rooting for you all every single time you come to work. We want you to feel confident. We want you to feel competent. And we want you to know that everyone is just rooting for you to do the best job that you can and take care of yourself as well at the same time. And nurses historically are very bad at that. But genuinely, you have your managers, your directors, your charge nurses, you have a whole network of people being your cheer team and to encourage and support as much as possible to make you understand and realize that we know what you're going through. We've all been there. We're all in this together, even if we're not physically at the bedside with you. So don't feel like you're alone and don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's to the resources on the AMSN website or whether it's to a counselor or a therapist. Certainly our facility provides an 800 number specifically for nurses in times of crisis. And I imagine that number is being called many, many times as the weeks and months go by. Alissa, is your facility doing anything specific that you know of or have stepped up to help the frontline nurses?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a resiliency center here in our organization, and they have really stepped up offering their services for our frontline workers. There are all sorts of debriefings and check-ins and a lot of different things offered through them. They also contribute to our clinical updates. So when our CEO and CNO and all of the C-suite are giving us the update on what the COVID picture looks like for our facility versus the state, they'll always have a part of that update that goes out to the facility, doing mindfulness or how to recenter yourself or recognize when you start having those symptoms of burnout. So it's been kind of amazing, I think, having the Resiliency Center and all of those wellness skills, tips, tricks integrated into just our normal updates that we're getting from our C-suite. They're like, okay, excellent. Here's what's going on. And then let's take a break and let's take a pause and let's recenter ourselves for what our purpose is here for today.
Yeah.
And I remember saying before in our COVID updates, behind every frontline nurse, there is an administrative team. There's a leadership team behind them that is supporting them and scared for them and wants the best for them and really hopes that they're being successful. We are finally at a point here at my facility where we're on that pendulum. We're on the tipping point, right? We are literally at 85%, which means that we are staffed right at the border, the edge, everybody is right on that edge. And if we tip over, we will not have the resources. We will not have the staff. We may have 15% more beds, but we don't have what we need to care for the patients in those beds. And it's a really scary place. And we've been kind of teetering on this edge for a little bit here. And you can tell that everybody's kind of weary. Everyone's kind of watching. We're just kind of waiting because we haven't quite hit that point where we're putting up, the makeshift hospital unit beds yet. We've been able to keep everything in-house and been able to serve all of our patients the way that we need to. But it's almost like we're waiting for that,
you're waiting for the shoe to drop, right?
Yes.
You're waiting for that feather that's going to push you over the edge. And
exactly.
That's stressful too.
It is. And everyone feels like we're right there. It's like, okay, so was Thanksgiving what pushed everyone on the edge? Are we going to have pop-up hospitals happening in another week or so? It's very high tension. It's very...
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm noticing from an education director perspective is that it's the end of the year. And so now everyone is scrambling to get all of their regulatory education done. And of course, hindsight's 2020, and it would have been fabulous if everyone had done this in January and February. And then of course, COVID hit and so many resources were taken away from us and live classes disappeared. And now everyone's scrambling to get all of that done. And there's pressure there. It's December and everything has to be taken care of. So just on top of everything else, not having enough resources to do their jobs with patients. Now there are people like me saying, don't forget to finish your code of conduct. Don't forget to do your regulatory requirements.
I know, right? It feels silly sometimes when you're like, hey, don't forget that, bloodborne.
I know. And even this week, it made me realize how much this situation has impacted end of year celebrations. We were going to do a big team meeting on Friday, but no potlucks right now, no get-togethers right now. So people don't even have that kind of fellowship to come together and vent and hopefully feel supported and move away with a more positive mindset. And certainly don't want to make this podcast negative, but I think the point to take away is we hear you and we understand, and things will get better. They will. They have to.
They will. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just so difficult when you're in the moment to remain positive. We will get through it together, and it won't last forever. I heard an expression last week: "Be positive, but test negative." Yeah, be positive. Yeah, be positive, but test negative. I'm like, well, that's kind of catchy, but it's true. It is so hard to get sucked up into all the doom and gloom of it. But yeah, remain positive, but test negative. And then there are, a T-shirt that I want is all I want for Christmas is a vaccine.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us can attest to that, certainly.
Well, I think, Carolyn, you make such a good point, and it's easy to dwell on what we know are the negative impacts of COVID. Everybody's feeling them. We're living them every day. We're concerned about them, so they get a lot of airtime. But let's also take an opportunity to think about how we could do things differently. What opportunities is this affording us? And how could we celebrate differently? How could we be creative? I'll use our convention as an example. We hated to have to go to a virtual convention. We held off as long as we could with the hopes that we'd be able to get together in person. And when it became evident we couldn't, we put all of our energy into figuring out how to make a virtual convention as fun and engaging as it could possibly be. And we had a great time. And so the attendees loved it.
Yes, so good.
We did things differently. So normally we have a lunch and learn session. You grab a box lunch and you go to your education session. And this time it was like, okay, well, we still have that lunchtime session. Let's send everybody a Grubhub. So we literally, everyone that registered for convention got a Grubhub so they could do the same thing, but they could just enjoy it from their desk at home. We did happy hours, and we did some fun happy hours. We had Nurse Blake, and we had a comedian from Australia who is a registered nurse.
Georgie, Nurse Georgie. She was fabulous.
She was, I didn't know how stand-up comedy was going to work through Zoom. And it was outstanding. And I laughed myself silly in my office all by myself, with a glass of wine. Yep. And we need that. I guess if we want to try and make something positive of this, we still need connection. We still need laughter, and we still need light in our life. So how can we get that differently? Yep. I know personally, I'm devastated. We go home to Canada 4 or 5 times a year. I have not been home in a year. I'm not going home for Christmas. I will not see my family. I could dwell on that, and I could think how awful that is. But what I've chosen to do instead is try and come up with novel ways to have a distance Christmas with all of my family who are going to be isolating in their homes in Canada. So we're talking about Zoom Christmas mornings and Zoom dinners. And we're talking about when we are able to get home. I don't know when that will be. Right. I'm hopeful that it might be April or May, but that might be just my hopefulness speaking. We're going to decorate then. when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And I know it's hard when you're facing the kind of work and the kind of stress that our nurses are facing every single day. And I don't pretend that it's easy, but there is some mindset here that can help us look for the lemonade.
Thank you. Most definitely. And again, thank gosh for technology. For some of us who are frightened to click the wrong thing or hit the wrong button, thank goodness for the fact that for most people, we can pick up a computer or a phone and see people and have that face-to-face connection. So thank goodness for technology. If it wasn't for that, a lot of people would be feeling a whole lot more isolated for sure.
Alissa and Carolyn, I know we're running out of time, but I did just want to reinforce for everyone again that we do have a lot of resources on our website. Please go and check them out. We also do have the emergency grant, in case you're not aware of that, for AMSN members that are experiencing hardship through the pandemic. We have grants available to help with that, and the board has committed money to make sure that we're able to support our members. We're advocating all the time on our nurses' behalf. We're advocating nationally, we're advocating with state governors to make sure that you have the resources that you need. And we're right in this with you. Like Alissa made the point, for every frontline nurse that's providing care, just know that you are surrounded. You might not be able to see us, but we're there and we're doing our best in the background to be able to support you in your work. So thank you for all that you've done this year. And we'll continue to do everything we can on your behalf.
Thank you, Terri, once again for being our special guest co-host, our honorary co-host. Some great words of encouragement, and thank you.
We look forward to connecting with you on our next episode of Med Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. Send us your questions, topic ideas, and feedback via our official Med Surg Moments email address, amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We'd also like to remind you to become a member of AMSN or renew your membership at www.amsn.org. You'll receive lots of cool benefits and perks, such as discounted pricing on the annual convention and continuing education.
We encourage you to help us spread the word and subscribe to Med Surg Moments podcast via your smartphone podcast app to receive notifications of future episodes. Please be sure to leave us a review and recommend Med Surg Moments wherever you get your podcasts to help us reach even more listeners.
We invite you to join the conversation by sharing your ideas and questions on AMSN's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter pages. And don't forget to add #MedSurgMoments to your post. Simply enter AMSN in the search field on any of these social media platforms to connect with us.
The content within the Med Surg Moments podcast represents the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, I'm Caroline.
I'm Alissa, and always remember, Med Surg Moments is a moment in our lives, a moment in our Med Surg careers that makes a huge difference.